All right. Apparently, Europe is finished. By Decoy voice. Interestingly enough, let's see if that's actually true. I'm European. I'm from Germany, and spoiler, we definitely are cooked. We definitely, spoiler alert, we definitely are cooked. Let's not deny that. Anyways, also, please consider liking, subscribing. I appreciate your support. We will jump in and see if I can add something to this. This video is 8 minutes long. Let's see. Let's see if I can add something to this.
Farmers from all across Europe have begun to surround the EU headquarters in Brussels. As the protest eventually became a fiery riot, the Belgian police began to deploy their water cannons.
What the fuck? That's very interesting. I've never heard them.
To which the farmers responded with blasts of manure, somewhat similar to Dragon Ball Z, just crappier. And although this seems silly, the situation is quite
Wait, did he change his name from Decoy voice to just Decoy? Interesting. When did that happen? When did that rebrand happen?
serious, considering the farmers are the only thing that stands between the citizens and starvation. So what exactly is making these agriculture workers from all across Europe revolt against the European Union? As yet,
yeah, they're in Brussels, but they're also here in Germany. I don't know if you guys outside of Europe remember when we here in Germany had the big protests from all these farmer guys and stuff. It was crazy. Like it was crazy. It was crazy. Like that was probably the greatest protest that I have ever, like the biggest one I've ever seen in my lifetime. That was very interesting. And obviously I'm fully on the side of these guys because, well, they feed us.
yesterday, farmers traveled across the country to Belgium, arriving late into the evening outside the European Union building, eventually setting fire to the trees outside. In early morning, local law enforcement began preparing for the protesters. Now, several farmers explained what they were angry over, but not knowing French, apparently they're protesting competition with foreign.
We cannot ask French farmers to produce highly healthy, high quality, and unpaid food, and to put it in competition with imported products that do not meet the same standards. Was the president of the coordination, okay, French name. Yep, that's very true. I generally question why we desperately need products from other places that aren't in season anyways. I question that. I really do. And if you really need stuff that isn't in season, then just, I don't know, then you gotta give them some money so that they can grow it here. I see no issue. It's like, and to be fair, a lot of the stuff that we import, especially food, right? Especially food, gets thrown away anyways. It gets thrown away anyways. There's containers full of food that gets just thrown away anyways.
Farmers that don't have the same regulations as they do. And I'm all for the free market, but it's hardly free when local farmers have carbon emission standards and taxes, increasing minimum wages, and general quality expectations, and now the EU says local food is getting too expensive, so let's import cheaper goods from places that don't.
Which is like funny, right? You want to make sure that the Europeans are eating more healthy, but then you import lower quality products that are likely made with pesticides and all the other stuff that shouldn't be in them. But then you complain. It's like there's no logic behind this. But then when it comes to regulations in the EU, logic is never really a thing.
Have those regulations we implemented. So maybe that's why angry farmers are dropping off potatoes to be tossed at the European Parliament building. and as they were tear gassed, the farmers used tennis rackets to pass them back. Now this went on for quite some time, at almost
Peak. That's cool. They're like tear gas, high pressure water, and the farmer's like, "You want a potato? I've got a potato."
a stalemate, until their tractors were used to tear down their barricades. Posting up a sign that roughly translates to, "Here begins the dictatorship" in French, as blue-collar protesters have no issue hauling away heavy planters. Then coming in with a automatic firework cannon.
Automatic firework cannon, kind of crazy. It's also like, listen. You're making the people angry that feed you, right? You're making the people angry that feed you. Yeah, get fucked.
Starting a large tire fire in the courtyard, then dropping off hay bales to make it worse. As eventually, the riot police began to push back the farmers. The tractors did stage somewhat of a counterattack, pushing back the police. Even tossing rocks, or abnormally large potatoes, at the cops.
Abnormally large potatoes. yeah, that's what they do. Or they drop shit. Like literally, they just drop mountains of shit. Back then, when the first big protest happened here in Germany, they literally just dropped shit in front of government institutions and buildings. They literally just dropped cow shit. It was glorious.
But eventually, the water cannons prevailed, forcing out the farmers from the courtyard. And even whacking the stragglers with their crime-fighting sticks. Where the farmers finally fled the scene, and into the evening, local citizens began collecting the left-behind potatoes, which is just a subtle reminder that these aren't far-left Antifa protesters, these are the farmers that feed us. So what exactly has them so angry, and whose side should you be on? As the mainstream media basically has zero credibility. But let's just look at the AP's article on the South American Free Trade Deal, reporting the farmers believe the agreement will undercut their livelihoods, but there are political concerns that it's driving support for the far right, as the deal will make trade between the EU and several
Yes, the far right. Farmers and their business.
South American countries free from duties on almost all goods. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I'm an expert in import duties, but what I do understand is this is pretty much the exact opposite of what President Trump is doing for America, as Trump's tariffs get constantly slammed by the liberal media, writing, "The affordability crisis is real and Trump's tariffs caused it," which is exactly what the Democrats want them to say, complaining about the record high prices, despite the fact that this is mainly, if not entirely, their fault, completely ignoring the $200 billion tariff revenue it has generated. And the cash is a nice bonus, but it's not the intended effect of the tariffs. It's the bolstering of both jobs and national security by bringing manufacturing back to America, which the corporate media already has their lies ready and waiting, despite the huge investments into American manufacturing across several industries totaling hundreds of billions of dollars. So although I'm not exactly certain of the specifics of selling out your local farms for cheaper foreign food, I completely distrust the mainstream media's pluses as to why it's good for us. As the AP's article again frames this as worrisome far-right rallies, saying this free trade deal will counteract China and the US's blitzkrieg. The mainstream media.
You, as Europe, you are third in charge. You are third in charge. You as Europe, we as Europe are third in charge. We ain't doing shit to China and the US. We ain't doing shit. Listen. You are stupid if you believe that you are actually, that they are actually doing anything meaningful. The EU seems to be more and more authoritarian towards their citizens. And I'm not even complaining about the restrictions you make, right? The restrictions on the food are not the problem. They keep us more healthy than, as harsh as it sounds, the average US citizen. But you also gotta then let people buy. You also have to have people buy from our farmers, our food producers, not foreigners. That's hypocritical.
Media's false framing has become so insane, every article is basically, here's the racist, evil, misogynistic, mean to puppies, Nazi Trump policy, versus or equal rights, feed the needy, healthcare for everybody, globalism agenda. It sounds like a joke, but we just—
Global homos is so crazy. Also, it's like, listen, it's like, you are not, first of all, there's no free healthcare. Free healthcare is a lie. They call it free healthcare, but it's not free healthcare. If you have to pay taxes for it to be free, then it's not free. Remember, that system is collapsing. That system is slowly collapsing. There will be more fees coming up when, for example, you go to the doctor. You have to pay an extra fee nowadays. At least that's in the works. If you call an ambulance, you're gonna need to pay for that to a degree. There is nothing free about this. In fact, it's gonna fall apart because people aren't having children here. So no new taxpayers, nobody's paying into the system. System dies. Same goes for pension, by the way. Same goes for retirement money. That is also dying. There's a lot of stuff dying in Europe, and obviously they're actively making the food more expensive anyways. See, they're importing food, but it's not that much more cheaper than... Realistically, it's not that much more cheaper than the local food. Like, not really. Not really at all. Because energy costs.
saw them literally do exactly that. Invoking Trump's tariff blitzkrieg is no accident, especially in a short article that suggests farmers as far right 5 times. It's almost like there's this preconceived agenda to get you against the local farmers, and just accept whatever genetically modified soy slop the third world will serve you. But the worst part about all of this is finding out exactly what is going on at the European Union right now. Apparently they're threatening them, saying money today or blood tomorrow, as they need more money for Ukraine.
I dislike this woman. I dislike this woman a lot. Ursula von der Leyen, the most powerful woman in the EU, likely the most powerful woman in the West, and also the most evil. When people say when women say there are no, it's all a patriarchy. There are no evil women. There are no evil. There's no evil leaders, female leaders. This is pure evil.
About 137 billion euros. Europe should cover 2/3, and this is not just about numbers. And it is also about ramping up the cost of war for Russia.
With the UK's Prime Minister, to take care, explaining who their real enemy is.
Putin's appetite for conflict and for chaos is already there, and it will only grow. And Russia is already menacing our skies.
The UK's main opponent nowadays is teenage boys who are quote-unquote misogynistic. In other words, they don't like to be disrespected. Specifically, British teenage boys, not teenage boys from Muslim countries.
Our waters, our streets, and our national security.
Preparing their citizens to sacrifice themselves for war.
It's absolutely clear that Russia's hard power is something to fear. Sons and daughters, colleagues, veterans will all have a part to play, to build, to serve, and if necessary, to fight. And more families will know what sacrifice for our nation means.
It's bad enough they've proven
In other words, they want to use your sons as cannon fodder, not the daughters, because right, military reconscription got reactivated here in Germany, right? For those who haven't received the memo, with potential on mandatory service, by the way. I wonder why. Seems like our chancellor wants to use our sons as cannon fodder. I find that very interesting. Women, by the way, are exempt for this. So we want to push, like, equality for everyone, but only men have to go. That includes, by the way, trans women. Huh.
they just see their citizens as tax cattle to fund all their ineffective progressive nonsense. But now,
Tax cattle, my friend, tax cattle. And then later, they're gonna use you as cannon fodder.
they're saying they see your sons as sacrificial lambs to a war that a majority of them forgot about. Which brings up the bigger concern of all those foreign newcomers that already fled this war once before when Ukraine was initially invaded and have been receiving social benefits in the EU ever since. So if these European leaders think they can just send their citizens to be the first to fight their newest war to defend the men that refuse to fight it, I think their protests are going to become a lot worse than manure. So if you appreciate my concise, lighthearted commentary on the tragic status that is today's reality, hopefully I've earned your subscription and you'll subscribe to Decoy.
Yeah, he has rebranded. Interesting. I did not know that Decoy rebranded. So he has rebranded. I'm not being schizo about it. He has rebranded. Interesting. Yep. It's gonna get worse. It's gonna get a lot worse. We already have protests from young men saying, "Yo, we do not want mandatory military conscription for your whatever you're planning." That is already happening. We already had those protests here. Yeah, that didn't really go anywhere. That didn't go anywhere at all. Actually, screw that. That didn't go really anywhere. Didn't change anything because, well, you can protest all you want. If it's not, like, genuinely a threat, they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit. And yeah, petitions are also really useless. I've noticed that petitions are incredibly useless. Like, incredibly useless. Anyways, thank you for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.